Hi everybody, Dan Bailey here with another Fujifilm tutorial for you. One of the most powerful aspects of the new Fujifilm 5th generation cameras, which are the XH2, the XH2S, and the X-T5, is that the autofocus system on these cameras has been radically improved. They've got faster processors, more updated autofocus tracking algorithms, and with a higher pixel count on the sensors of the XH2 and the X-T5, that means more phase detect pixels, and that means greater accuracy for acquiring and tracking moving subjects across the frame. In addition, all three of these cameras have a new feature called Subject Detect Autofocus. And this works a lot like face detection, except it's calibrated to recognize a number of different subject types. And these are animals, birds, automobiles, motorcycles and bicycles, trains and airplanes. And the way this works is that you go into the autofocus menu on the camera, enable the Subject Detect AF setting, and then choose one of those different subject types. Then when you point the camera out at the world, if it sees a subject that matches that type, it's automatically going to lock onto that subject and track it, as I said, very much like face detection. So it's an extremely accurate way and a very efficient way to track a variety of moving subject types without having to move the little AF zone box around with a joystick. If it's out there, it's automatically going to see it and it's going to keep tracking it no matter where it goes through the frame. So this is going to be a huge boon to wildlife shooters, especially bird photographers. The whole BIF thing has just opened up in a big way on the X Series cameras. I shoot a lot of cycling and bike races and stuff, so I'm going to get a whole lot of use out of this feature. Airplane and airshow photographers, it's going to be a huge boon to you as well. In fact, I heard from one guy in the UK who goes to a lot of different air shows, and he says there's Canon and Nikon shooters everywhere, and he never sees any Fujis. He feels like he's the only Fuji shooter in all of the UK who shoots air shows. I'm sure there's more of you guys out there, but they seem to be few and far between compared to all the Canon and Nikon guys. But hey, with this new feature, you suddenly have a huge amount of power. So throw on that 100 to 400 or that 150 to 600 and point it up at the sky, and you're going to have a huge increase in your autofocus capabilities of the cameras. One question I've heard from a few Fuji shooters is, does this new Subject Detect AF system work with the AFC Custom Settings? And if so, how do they affect each other? How do they work together? Does this new Subject Detect AF system respond differently if you're changing your Autofocus Custom Settings menu? And the answer is yes, they do work together, and here's how. As I said, the new Subject Detect Autofocus system on the 5th gen Fujis works a lot like face detection. You turn it on, select a subject type, and if that subject's out there, it's going to see it. And it's going to do an amazing job of acquiring and tracking that subject no matter where it moves throughout the frame, even if it disappears for a few seconds. Now, the AFC Custom Settings menu is designed to change the way that the autofocus system performs and behaves on the Fujis. Now, when you're adjusting your autofocus custom settings in that menu, so you're adjusting things like where in that green AF zone box is the camera going to look for the subject? The outside of the zone, the inside of the zone, or the closest thing that's to the camera? Or you're changing how the camera tracks moving subjects. So if the subject disappears behind a tree or something, is the camera going to keep locked on to that subject distance and hopefully it'll reappear soon? Or will it immediately go looking for something else? Or is it calibrated towards a steadily moving subject through the frame or something that moves much more erratically? And of course, in addition to the 3 parameters you can adjust on the AFC Custom Settings, you have 5 different presets and an open 6th slot that you can designate as your own custom preset. Now, I did a whole video on the AFC Custom Settings menu. Now again, the Subject Detect AF simply looks for a subject type, and the AFC Custom Settings determines the exact behavior by which the Fuji actually tracks and acquires and stays locked on that subject. So for example, if you got the camera's Subject Detect AF set to birds, and you're photographing things like soaring eagles which move majestically across the frame through the sky, and then you might be shooting some Arctic terns which are like, flying, zipping all over the frame, you might switch your AFC Custom Settings preset in order to handle those 2 types of flight patterns. One has a more steady rate of movement across the frame, and one has a more erratic rate of movement. And maybe you're shooting a bunch of birds that are kind of flying near some busy subject matter, maybe down in the marsh or there's a patch of trees, and you want to track the motion even if it disappears and reappears behind that. Then you would use your Ignore Obstacles Custom Settings preset, which is number 2. But maybe there's a whole bunch of birds that you're photographing and you just want anything to be tracked as soon as it comes out from behind those trees. So in that case, you might switch to the Suddenly Appearing Subject preset, which is number 4. Same thing with something like motorsports. Maybe you've got your camera and your lens pointed right at the curve where this Formula One car is going to come whipping around. And you want to grab that right when it comes into the frame. Again, you'd probably want to use preset number 4, suddenly appearing subject. And that might be a different situation than if you're following a specific car and he's jockeying for position within the whole pack and sometimes disappearing behind other cars as it makes its way to the front. So that would be, again, ignore obstacles. So again, with the 3 parameters that you can adjust in the AFC Custom Settings menu, and with the 5 different custom presets you can select from, or the 6th preset, you can make a custom preset, those determine the exact behavior by which the camera will acquire and track the subjects that you've defined in the Subject Detect AF menu. To make it simple, Subject Detect AF, what am I looking for? AFC Custom Settings, when it finds it, how is it going to behave with regards to movement and tracking across the frame? So I hope that answers your questions and clears things up as to how these systems work together on the new Fuji cameras. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below. If you have any experience using either of these settings, please let me know. If you are a Fuji user, you'll definitely want to check out my best-selling ebook, X Series Unlimited, which I've just updated to fully cover the X-T5, XH2, and XH2S. So all these new settings are covered in the book. Basically, it's the missing manual of the Fujis, especially for the X-T5, which apparently isn't even shipping with a manual in some countries. But no worries, I've got you covered. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Check out some of my other tutorials. You can find me on social media and Patreon at Dan Bailey Photo. You can visit my blog and website as well. So thanks again. Have fun with your Fujis out there, and I'll see you next time.